what you talk about a rugby incident, I think was the line used around Manu Tuilagi's collision with Tommaso Allen last weekend as well, that didn't quite get the same amount of attention as Owen Farrell. How is that a rugby incident? How is that very different?
I don't know. I'm confused on some of them. Like that, for me, that can go two ways because I don't know. Again, is the arm fully up in a wrap position to the same degree as other tackles? I'm having so many conversations with different people at times and trying to speak to current players, coaches, to understand referees, because there is huge inconsistency around, the decision making. And sometimes I'm in commentary and, a tackle comes in and I'm really not sure what the outcome is going to be. And you're there to give an opinion, but when you're not sure yourself, whether something's borderline, yellow card, red card, it's a really challenging thing to do. The last thing you want to do is be seen as that guy that's trying to get people, red carded or seen to, be punishing people unnecessarily. But then we are trying to protect the game at the same time. So I think if I look at the Farrell incident, it's probably a better one. I think there's a few things in that. Obviously, there's, he sees the player coming. Okay, he is only a metre away, but he has time to be able to see that body position. It doesn't come at speed at him. He does hinge a little bit, but he is going for a really big shot on him. And what I think is really interesting, and I know this isn't great for radio, but from a social media point of view, the big thing is about what happens with the rotation of his shoulder. And Farrell, for me, the afterthought with a lot of his challenges is the wrap comes as a secondary thought, because when you rotate your shoulder forward, you're in a less vulnerable position. You're in a stronger position to make a dominant collision. Whereas if you're in a position where you accept a wrap is going to be part of that collision, it's not as well a tucked position. It's not as strong a position. And I suppose I liken it to a tackle of mine back in 2009 in the Lions tour against Danny Rousseau, when I went charging in. And I wasn't thinking about a wrap. I was thinking about literally running in and trying to make contact with my shoulder. Now, in the game these days, that's probably a red card incident. But then it was legal. And I see, if you look at Farrell now, an awful lot of his borderline tackles, he rotates the arm. And I think that does come back from his upbringing, from being, if you look at rugby league collisions, a lot of them are shoulder first and arm afterwards. Whereas the borderline is what's the legal request on a wrap? It's meant to be immediately after the shoulder collision. And I think sometimes in his circumstance that the wrap is a secondary thought to the collision win. And whether it's for me, that's really on the cusp of legality. I didn't think, and there's not much said about that at the weekend. I think that the wrap comes a little bit too late for me. And when I'm talking about losing these big hits and these big dominant forces, it's the shots that need to go. You can still put in big collisions with your arm in a locked position ready to brace, but the bigger shots tend to come from something where the arm is tucked a little bit and the shoulder protrudes.
So if you're to watch Owen Farrell consistently week in, week out, is he getting away with a lot of similar shots? Because he I guess that line, he presents a good picture to the referee where he gets the shot in and he does get the wraparound just in time, that it does look like it's all the one motion.
I think technically he probably gets the benefit of the doubt that the wrap is ensuing, but I don't think it's lined up for it to be part of the initial collision. And listen, I have to caveat all of this by saying, like, I'm a huge Owen Farrell fan, and I have been, and I think there's something, I love the gladiatorial nature of him as a player. He's everything you want in a rugby player to play with. I was lucky to be on the Lions tour in 2013 with him. He's super humble. He's follow me sort of attitude. And it sets the standard. So if he was your teammate, it's everything you want, and he plays right on the cusp. But there's times over the course of his career that he has gotten the benefit of the doubt, maybe because he's Owen Farrell or because it's marginal decision and you want to favour, keeping the relevant numbers on the field. But I suppose if you look back to one of his other infamous tackles was against Esterhuizen against South Africa, probably going back 5-6 years ago now at this stage. And it was a massive moment in an England Springbok game. And I remember thinking, and I tweeted about it going, whoa, there's nothing wrong with that collision. And in hindsight, there was absolutely no rap involved. But I guess I was drawn to the gladiatorial nature of who this guy is and the impressiveness of being willing to put his body on the line against an enormous man. But you got to separate that from the legalities and illegalities of what the tackle looks like at the moment. And I do think he plays on the cusp and crosses the line a few times too many. And I think maybe this tackle clinic that he's going to go on will actually benefit him for once, because you don't want to modify and take that out of his game, but you want to make sure that the shots do feel on a legal framework going forward, because it's such an important part of his game. And now that there's another ban that he's serving, the referees will be looking out for it all the more.
The job of the disciplinary hearing then is to, I guess, make that separation as well and protect the player who is receiving the shot, and also to make sure that Owen Farrell goes through whatever procedure so he has a second thought next time it happens. When you look at the procedure, because this is the other debate, is the potential loophole is coming up, an initial 6-week ban that is reduced to 4 weeks, that if he goes to tackle school is down to 3 weeks, which would still rule him out of the Six Nations opener. But there is a loophole which we'll have to wait and see if they take advantage of. So he will miss the 2 Champions Cup games coming up, though Saracens are in a fine position to qualify anyways, and then a league game against Bristol that ordinarily he would never play in, but if he's not named in the England squad, they could say that, well, that is going to be his 3rd game.
What do you think Borthwick is going to do, Nathan?
Oh, well, I suspect we all know what he's likely to do, but considering...
Of course he's likely to do that. But why wouldn't you? This is professional sport.
For the integrity of the disciplinary process.
Available to him.
But for the integrity of the disciplinary process, and even with Steve Borthwick coming in and trying to implement maybe a complete culture shift around that England national team, do you just accept the ban? And do you say to Owen Farrell, actually, if you do this in the World Cup, you might cost us a World Cup. You need to actually suffer for what you did here. You were reckless. Take the ban. Actually, we're restoring the values of English rugby again.
If he is, fair play to him, but I don't see that happening. Why would you forego one of your most important players, your leader, possibly your captain, someone that has done it time and time again? Why would you not take advantage of a circumstance where you could release him for a couple of days and then have him back? He'd missed 2 days of training. You haven't technically done anything wrong, and bring him in for your first game in charge of an England team. Massive pressure on England because of the November they've had. You're going to want to be fully loaded with who you're going to play there. Marcus Smith has barely played in the last month. He's meant to be coming back into things now. Won't be as sharp. Farrell's been playing some really good rugby in the Premiership. For me, I think you got to do the right thing, aside, and I think Borthwick will absolutely release him, and then that will count as his 3rd game, and he'll play against Scotland.
This whole process really doesn't do rugby any favours, though, when we see, and it's every suspension is the initial 6-week reduced down mitigating factor. Good behaviour at the hearing. Like, has any player not behaved well at the hearing?
Exemplary, was it?
Exemplary. But I think he did apologise.
Before and during it.
Have you ever walked into a hearing and said, this is a load of nonsense, I'm not taking this, whatever you come up with?
I loved that line, I have to say.
Mark McCall, who's a completely uninterested observer, gave him a glowing report.
But we've all been there. I've done that in the past. I've given reports for teammates in the past, and my God, have I waxed lyrical about how great
How is that even allowed? Like, why are they asking Brian O'Driscoll for his opinion on his teammate at a disciplinary hearing?
Because, someone's got to back them up, right? Who are you going to get?
But why does anyone have to back them up? You look at the video, you take that incident as it is, and you decide what a ban is.
But this is the process. Okay, fine. I get that. Like, it's just always been the case. It's remind people of the good standing of this individual, and not just take in isolation this one moment of madness or incident that is out of character, or that has is not a consistent line of in situ within this personality.
I want to know about the guy you refused to write the letter for. Nah, let him suffer. Let him take the ban. No comment. No comment.
There's been none. No. There's none for me. Any teammates you'll be willing to, but also coach will know to pick and choose. If you don't have a great relationship with someone in your team, you're not going to obviously, be asked to stand and speak on their behalf. So, but that's never arisen.
So that is just one part of a really interesting conversation with Brian O'Driscoll. It is 50 minutes in full. If you want to hear any of our rugby coverage, the easiest thing to do is click here and subscribe, so you get all our rugby from the OTB Rugby feed. Or if you just want to listen to this full 50 minutes episode, you can click right here. You'll get it now. We talk about Owen Farrell suspension, the form of Ulster and Munster in the URC, Ben Healy leaving Munster to go to Scotland, and also the groundbreaking revelation that Brian O'Driscoll could have signed from Munster. All of that available in full on the podcast. And as a bonus, we got another little clip for you on YouTube as well that you can find on the Off the Ball YouTube stream.